Hello, everybody, and welcome to Science Talks, where we explore the latest ideas in research and science. For those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Josh, and I'm one of the hosts here at Science Talks. We're so excited for you to come and join us this evening. But before we get into our topic, I'd like to walk you through our program and what you can expect this evening. All right, so we're going to have a talk from an expert scientist today. The first series of science talks that we ran were with the 4 research chairs from UFV, and this is the second series, and this is the third installment in this second series, which continues with scientists from research centers at UFV. So you get to see the latest and greatest on what's going on. Right after we have a presentation, there'll be a Q&A portion where you can ask and engage with our expert today, and then we'll have a bit of a wrap up and conclusion. Some Zoom etiquette: if you would like to ask a question, feel free to type it into the chat. You can also use the raise your hand feature in the chat room. For those of you, just to make you aware, today is being recorded and will be posted after, and you'll get an email link that you can share or rewatch after today. As a part of Science Talks, this is meant to be a conversation with an expert today, and we'll be welcoming a wide range of questions. Bring all of your questions, they're welcome. But it's also meant to be a safe environment that everyone can participate, and you're meant to bring a bit of an open mind and bring inclusion and be open to other people's other people's opinions, and this is not the space for self-promotion. I would like to now introduce you today to our co-host Tiffany, who's going to give a few thank yous to a few people who make today possible. Over to you, Tiff.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh. Again, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. This is very exciting for us. And I want to give a huge shout out to all of the wonderful companies and people that do make this possible, because we do love bringing this to you every month. Thank you so much for our initial funding from the City of Abbotsford, the Vancouver Foundation, the Abbotsford Community Foundation through their Responsive Neighborhood Small Grant Fund. Thank you so much for getting us started in this. As well, thank you to the people that are keeping us going, the University of the Fraser Valley, the Abbotsford Tech District, Connext, UFV Alumni Association, TEDx Abbotsford. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure working with each and every one of you. And now I'm going to be bringing up Craig Toes from UFV. We are very excited to have him here today, and he will be introducing our today's speaker for you. Welcome, Craig.
Great, thanks, Tiffany. Is my video on?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. As Johan and Tiffany shared, it's great to see so many people joining us tonight, well over 50. My name is Craig Toes. I'm Vice President External Relations at the University of the Fraser Valley. I'm honored to introduce our speaker tonight on Science Talks, and tonight's speaker is Dr. Shelley Canning. First, I'd like to acknowledge that this beautiful place we call home, where we live, work, and play and learn, is in the heart of the traditional territory of the Stalo people of the river. We are grateful for the care and stewardship of these lands that we now benefit, and would like to recognize our closest neighbors, the Sumac, Kwantlen, and Matsqui First Nations, OCM. Tonight's speaker is Dr. Shelley Canning. Shelley is an associate professor in nursing at the University of the Fraser Valley. She is the coordinator of UFV's Center for Education and Research on Aging, and a research associate with the Health and Social Innovation Hub. Shelley completed her doctoral studies in the School of Nursing at UBC, where her dissertation research explores issues of engagement, meaning, and quality of life for older adults with advanced dementia. Her nursing practice background includes palliative oncology and community health. Shelley's been a faculty member at UFV since 2006. Her teaching is geared towards developing professionalism and supporting best practice with a focus on care for older persons. She also strives to integrate an understanding of the importance of research in supporting evidence-informed practice through teaching students in directed studies. Shelley's research interests have focused on older adults living in residential care, and I look forward to tonight's virtual science cafe where Shelley will speak about ageism, the challenges of staying engaged and included. Please welcome Dr. Shelley Canning.
Hi, Craig, thanks so much. I will pull up my screen here. And sorry, just give me a sec. I do not, you know it. I did practice this and now I'll just have to quickly open my, sorry, everybody. There we go. Okay, it should be up now. Okay. How's that?
Excellent, looks good.
Okay, so with that, sorry for that delay. I actually did practice a few minutes before this started. But thanks very much, Craig. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about ageism and to share some of the research I've done and some of the work that we're doing at UFE's CERA, or our Center for Education and Research on Aging. And as I begin, I also want to acknowledge that I'm giving this presentation from my home office, and that's on the unceded territory of the Stalo people. And I do recognize my privilege to be living and working on these lands. Being introduced as a scientist might be a bit confusing to some of the audience who don't think of nurses as scientists. But actually it is an applied science. And as a nurse researcher, I see myself very much as an applied scientist. So in that way, the kinds of things that nurses research really are based on problems from a practice setting that can create solutions that directly apply back to that practice setting. So as a researcher and a nurse, I'm interested in issues of quality of life and well-being as we age. And that means I'm interested in understanding how to address ageism and how to support older people, including those that live with dementia, so that they can engage in meaningful activities and relationships. And for the next little bit, I'm going to talk about ageism, issues of social inclusion, meaningful engagement, and how to support quality of life. I'm going to focus mostly on long-term care, where the most frail seniors are living, and that's a place where COVID-19 has revealed some really critical issues that challenge us all to be able to meet the health and social needs of the people that live there. I'm going to share a bit of research from a study I've conducted with people living in long-term care that highlights some of their enduring abilities to continue to maintain meaningful engagement. And then finally, I'll introduce some of the research I'm currently engaged in with colleagues at CERA. And as I begin, I also want to acknowledge that all of the photos in this presentation are from studies I have conducted and that they're all shared with consent of the participants. So the prospect of getting old is often seen quite negatively. It's often feared. We fear losing the ability to direct our own lives. We often fear becoming dependent on others or living in care. The prospect of living with dementia is especially feared. We fear losing our memories, of not being able to recognize our loved ones. And while we fear aging, we're actually living in a society that's aging quite quickly. And by the end of this decade, about a quarter of Canadians will be over 65 years old. And this reality is that more people are actually living longer lives. So that means more older people will be living in our communities, more older people living in long-term care, more people living with dementia. And this is a reality that challenges our society, a society that's very strongly built around values of youth and ability. Like other forms of discrimination, ageism and dementiaism can present in different ways, and they have significant negative impacts. Discrimination based on age is widespread. It's promoted through media depictions. It's expressed in workplaces, in healthcare settings, and in people's homes. In anticipation of this aging demographic, the World Health Organization declared that this decade, 2020 to 2030, is the decade of healthy aging. And they recognize in that aging has a significant negative impact on our health. They've made a global call that we all take action to address ageism. And that's through things like promoting social inclusion, intergenerational connections, and supporting age-friendly and dementia-friendly initiatives. Ageism reflects our attitudes, our values, and our beliefs about older people. And the way that we understand older people and the way that we anticipate our own aging really determines how we treat them in both our individual relationships and as a society. Older people, especially people living with dementia, tend to be viewed as being different and different in negative ways. And as a result, ensuring inclusion and quality of life can be really challenging. Age is the main factor for dementia, and dementia impairs our ability to make sense of the world, to remember people, past events, to remember how to do things. Age is also a main risk factor for many common medical diagnoses, like arthritis or cardiovascular, the kinds of diseases that limit mobility, endurance, and energy. And both of these kinds of cognitive and physical losses can impair functional ability. And that functional ability loss causes older people to struggle to participate in what would be typical everyday activities and relationships. So they often struggle to initiate social connections and activities. And when opportunities occur, they might struggle to participate and communicate. They need more time, more assistance, more patience. As older people become more dependent on others, that risk of social isolation can increase. They become increasingly dependent on the rest of us to create those opportunities. And this isn't always easy. We don't always know what to do or how to do it, especially when people have more complex deficits and we begin to see them as being different from the rest of us. And most problematically, sometimes there becomes a belief that older adults can actually no longer benefit from engagement, that they're not capable of engaging in meaningful ways, and there's really no benefit to them. And that's the most profound form of ageism. My dissertation research explored that belief that disabilities would completely erase abilities. In my study, I examined the experiences of people living with advanced dementia as they engaged in meaningful activities and social connections. I spent 7 months watching and interacting with a small number of residents, family, and staff members. And what I found was that despite their obvious deficits and losses, the residents demonstrated enduring abilities for meaningful engagement. In fact, they remained more able much longer than many people believed. I found the residents continued to engage socially in positive ways, often using humor to connect socially and communicating meaning through positive gestures and expressions. Arts-based programming was also a really successful way to provide those opportunities. For example, music is a particularly good medium to support social connections and creativity. And the care home that I conducted my research in had a full-time music therapist. She was able to connect in really meaningful ways with residents at all stages of disease. So I would argue that if our frailest older adults, those living with advanced dementia in long-term care, If they continue to engage in meaningful ways and demonstrate enduring abilities, then we're beholden really to provide those opportunities. We must provide models of care that ensures those residents have their social and emotional needs met. While there are individual care homes that are doing a pretty good job of meeting the needs of residents, it remains that our current long-term care homes do present real challenges to ensuring residents have quality of life. Historically, these institutions were designed to care for large numbers of people at the same time, in the same ways, maximizing minimal resources. And current models of care are still built around routines where individualized care can be difficult to do. This past year, COVID-19 has highlighted how the current long-term care environment and care models really fail to meet our residents' health needs. We also know that residents need to have social needs met as well as health needs, and this is also challenging to achieve. The biggest influence in the ways we address social needs has been with the embrace of a person-centered care approach, and this has been across Canada and other Western countries. Briefly, person-centered care is a model of care that focuses on the person rather than their disease. So recognizing the person contextually in terms of their history and their relationships. And again, while we've embraced this model of care, we continue to really struggle to implement it successfully in our care homes. So COVID-19 is directing our attention to long-term care, and I think there might be opportunities there. The next steps are going to be really critical, and I think we're going to have to make some decisions about whether we patch up an old system that I don't think met the needs well, or whether we are brave and decide to embrace some new models. And my hope is that there really will be a reimagining and a reinvestment in seniors' care, including long-term care. I hope that we consider some of the alternative care models and environments that have been developed, and all of those are developed around that person-centered care approach. You might have heard of the dementia village. There's a dementia village modeled in Langley, but the original model came from the Netherlands. And that's a model of a care home that really is designed around a home, typically small cottages, and where the focus is on supporting everyday types of familiar activities, for example, shopping or cooking or cycling, things that the residents would have been very familiar with. One of the new models of care that I've been interested in is the green care farm model. And these are photos from a green care farm in the Netherlands that I visited a couple of years ago when I was presenting at a conference there. I visited 2 different green care farms. And these are actually working farms. These photos are from a fairly large dairy farm. And the model for the green care farm is where the farmers in a working farm take on a second role or a second job. So there's basically 2 businesses running out of the farm. And here you can see folks are engaged in the kind of agricultural environment that they likely had grown up with. One of the principles that green care farms adhere to is that they strive to provide enough kind of natural opportunities for activities that people would have been engaged in their earlier life that they would like to still be engaged in now. So while there's still group opportunities, there's less routine in each day. And so there's more time for people to go around and participate in the kinds of activities that they might, that just kind of takes their fancy in the moment. So the gentleman at the top of the picture, he had been a farmer himself. And for him, rather than participating in the routine or group activities, he really liked to spend his time in the barn, watching the farm workers, watching the cows. So these kinds of care homes and care models are looking at how do we understand what's meaningful to people at this stage of their lives, and how do we provide those opportunities. Intergenerational connections provide another model of care that's been looked at a lot. For example, some care homes have been built in conjunction with daycares in the same buildings, and you'll see preschool children and older adults living in care participating in the same activities. There's also been care homes built adjacent to universities, and that provides multiple really rich opportunities for partnerships and relationships between the residents and the students, faculty, and staff at the university. We know that ageist beliefs and values begin early before children enter school, and often family members live at a distance. So it's important that generations have opportunities to be together, that they have opportunities to learn about each other and to promote some positive understandings. And increasingly then, intergenerational relationships are understood as being important ways to counter ageism and dementiaism. The photos on this slide are photos from a study I conducted with some other CERA members a few years ago, where we partnered 6 children from grades 2 to 4 in a long-term care home in weekly ballet classes. And our findings showed that there were significant benefits for both the residents and the children. For some of the residents, it was actually the only activity that they would participate in. And that speaks to the significance or importance of that opportunity for them. With the children, we found positive changes in their views of the residents over the 6 months of the study. They moved away from early descriptions of difference and disability, and instead began describing the residents as their partners and highlighting their abilities. So currently, I'm conducting 3 different studies all with intergenerational focus with some of my colleagues at CERA. The first study is a follow-up on the study I just spoke about, partnering students with residents in ballet classes. We're actually interviewing the girls again. They're now 7 years later. They're late teens or early adults. In fact, one of them is actually a UFB student now. And we're looking to explore how that early experience they had might have impacted their current understandings of aging and older people. In the second study, I'm examining a partnership between first-year nursing students and community living seniors over this past year of COVID restrictions. So the students and the seniors were partnered in a series of remote visits using phone, FaceTime, or Zoom. And we're looking at the way the students understand aging and old people after this experience. And we're also interviewing the seniors, exploring how these visits might have impacted their sense of social connection or isolation during this COVID year. And finally, I am really excited to be partnering with a local grade 3-4 teacher in Abbotsford, where we're creating some introductory education on aging and dementia. There currently is no aging or dementia content in the public school system, so we think we're filling a really important need. And we're partnering the students and the seniors together in a pen pal project between now and the end of the school year. I have been really lucky to work on the majority of my research projects with a really wonderful group of friends and scholars at CERA. So I want to acknowledge how privileged I am to work with the other folks at CERA. And I've listed a few areas where different members of CERA have been engaged in research. And with that, I think I will say thank you very much. I hope I've given you a good idea about some of the things that have been done at CERA and a sense of importance in terms of looking at aging and older people maybe with a new lens. And even though it might look a bit grim at times with some of the stories that we've heard in the news this year, I think that there's lots of opportunity for us to make a difference. And And with that, I think I'll leave it, and thank you very much for your attention.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Canning. Before we get into the Q&A, I just want to let everybody know who's watching right now. Feel free to start asking questions in the chat, and we will start bringing them up in our discussion with Dr. Canning. So if you can start sending those questions, that would be great. So Dr. Canning, I've got a question to start you off. What started your research in the area? What got you interested in this?
I think kind of, as I said at the beginning, as an applied health researcher, when you're a nurse and you're interested in research, the kinds of things that you're drawn to are those problems or issues in practice. And I've worked a lot with older people in different settings, and all the research that I'm motivated to do all comes from issues that I've seen in care and I've seen people experience. So I think it's a desire to make a difference there, Josh.
That's really important. That's really great. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it's not an easy time to be a nurse.
No.
What would you say the most exciting project that you're working on right now, or that you see someone working on right as we speak in this area?
There is a lot of interest right now in long-term care specifically, and I think I'm not sure if I can say exciting research. I think the most important things that are being done now are ways of keeping the conversation going and bringing the stories out so that the rest of society, whether it's policymakers, government, or so that we all understand what life is like and what some of the challenges are, and can support making the changes that need to happen in long-term care. It's a world that's often unknown to many people unless you have a parent or relative that lives there, or unless you're one of a group of healthcare providers that works there. Many people have never actually been in long-term care, and they don't know what the challenges of that world are and what the potential solutions are.
What would you say a typical response has been to your research so far when you share it? Is it confirming common opinions, or is there some surprising findings that people are responding to?
I think most people, if they work with older people, are not surprised when I talk about things like enduring abilities or persistent personhood, and the importance that meaningful engagement can still have even at very close to end of life or significant disease symptoms. And I think that it touches people because, not just my research, but research in these areas, because this is, when we talk about the frailest people that live with us in this society, this is who we're talking about. And I think there's a natural empathy that, people often don't know what to do. It is challenging to know how to be sometimes, but I think people want to. They want to do a good job. They want to interact well. They want to see our seniors well cared for.
Okay. So I've got a question here from the audience. You mentioned the green care farm model as a new model of care. Are there such centers in the Fraser Valley or BC?
Not that I know of, but I would love it if somebody was interested. It is a model that began in Europe, and Germany and the Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands, I believe, are kind of the centers. There was one green care ranch in Montana. So there isn't only one good model of care. because there's not only one way of being old, there's not one way of being anything. So there's a range of things that can be important to all of us, and there's a range of models of care, but this is one I think that has good potential. A lot of our older adults right now come from a pretty agricultural background, and we do know that a natural environment is a really important intervention, actually. So people need to be outside. It's healthy for them. It's healthy for our social and emotional needs. So yeah, it is. I think it is a model that has some legs, and it would be a nice fit in the Fraser Valley.
I agree. That sounds great. So I've got a question that's a very local based question. Are costs in Langley's village prohibitive or beyond the means of many with advanced dementia and only a moderate income?
So that's an interesting question. There is a dementia village, or a private long-term care home that's styled on the dementia village concept that I talked about. And the private versus public care system is problematic in some ways, because not all seniors have the same finances. So I worked for years in community health as a case manager, and when you look at the group of seniors today, many of them didn't necessarily have a pension outside of what they currently get through government pensions. So unless you had outside, if you have resources other than the minimum resources, you can afford it. But no, not everybody can afford private care. It is quite prohibitive unless you have a fairly good income. Okay,
I got a question here from Mary, and maybe focusing on the future and the solution. She says that caring for seniors is unique. Can you maybe talk to where somebody could study geriatric nursing? Is that something at UFV or somewhere else in BC that you can specialize in?
So it's an interesting specialty because really it spans all areas. Nurses that work in the community work primarily with older people. Nurses that work in the hospital actually work primarily with older people. It's only on a maternity or a pediatric unit that you see a uniquely young population. Everywhere else, ICU, emerge, medicine, surgery, all these places are full of older people. But there isn't a special education for it. There is gerontology education in every nursing program. So that's what I teach at UFV. And there are postgraduate education pieces that you can do. There is a provincial gerontology nurses association in BC. I'm a member of that group, and we offer ongoing education. We have a conference on April 16th. It's free. If you're interested, Mary, in attending, you could look us up, GNABC. So yeah, I think people learn on the job. They learn through continuing education. The Canadian Nurses Association offers a certification. So there's different ways to build your expertise.
All right, perfect. And you, at the end of your presentation there, and beforehand we talked on this, you provided your email. And if there are any questions that do not get answered during today's session, or if you'd like to reach out to Shelley to find out about pathways or things like that, she's open to being sent a message along this topic. So I've got a question here from Daniel. You indicate that social interaction is vital, but are there things that are just as important? And he includes examples like diet, exercise, supplements. How would you maybe rank those in importance?
It's a good question, Daniel. They're all important. We know that people absolutely have to move. If you're looking at the human body in terms of all the physical systems, movement is critical. And I mean, we're a machine, and we're fueled by good nutrition. So I think you have to have a holistic look at health, and the social interaction is what feeds our hearts and souls. And so I wouldn't say one is more important necessarily than the other, but I do know that as people, I worked for a long time in palliative oncology. So when we get closer to the end of our lives, those social connections become absolutely critical. And we all have a different need for interaction. Some people it's a lot, some people it's smaller. So there's not one way to be. Again, people are complex, but definitely social interaction, we need it.
Okay, I've got a question here from Helen. How soon will these new programs become the normal? Right now, after this COVID year, I think a lot of my fellow baby boomers are planning on avoiding leaving their homes. Can you speak to maybe when the programs will become the norm?
Oh, I think that it depends on us. It depends on society. We have to decide that seniors care is worth investing in. As a society, we have to decide that it's not okay to have what happened this past year happen again. And what COVID has revealed to us is not really unique to COVID. The curtain got pulled back on what happens in long-term care. So it's a place that doesn't adequately meet the needs of the folks that live there, who again, people are living much longer than ever, much more complex than ever. So the care needs are huge. And I think we need to decide as a society, are we going to make a difference or are we going to just patch it up? I would hope we make a difference.
Okay, and Jennifer expands on this a little bit. What are your views regarding private versus government-run facilities?
So that's, on one sense, that's a little bit of a hard one. Sometimes, there are some private care places that provide very good care. But we know from the numbers that overwhelmingly the care homes that had the poorest performance, that had the most outbreaks and deaths, it was all related to private care homes. So it's not completely simple. It's a complicated piece because each province does organize their healthcare in different ways. But I think we're going to have to look long and hard at what we're doing in terms of private. And certainly private for profit has been really problematic. But that's not to say that there haven't been some government funded care homes that also really struggled. The bottom line is that there are simply not enough resources to meet the needs of the complexity of the people living there. And then the other layer on top of that is that we don't have enough checks and balances. And there's not, even when there have been identified issues, there doesn't seem to be a way to make those changes that need to happen.
Okay. I've got a question here from Bob. Have you experienced, has your experience with dementia patients who are really non-responsive to their visitors? What is this? Yeah, maybe I'll skip this question for now. Sorry, Bob. This is a question from Mary. There's a term called orphan seniors, which reflects a new trend developing of seniors without children or families to be involved in their care. How can our health system provide checks and balances for seniors who do not have advocates or someone looking out for them?
Yeah, that's I think we need to, yeah, I'm not exactly sure, Mary, what we'd be looking at, but we need to build some of those maybe safety nets in through intergenerational partnerships, through making sure that we have seniors connected with the rest of society, that it's not a question of getting old and being pushed off, that there are opportunities that you would have access to. I know that interestingly, they've been doing a lot of work in aging research in some of the Asian countries that have highly aging populations, and where they have had very low birth rates. They've had a generation of seniors who have, if they had only one child and that child died, they would be in that situation you're talking about as orphan seniors. So yeah, it's, I think we just need more resources, better connections. We don't want people to fall through the cracks and be alone.
I've got a question here from Sherry that has to do with the research on it. Are you interested in doing research on older adults still living in community and what is needed to keep them independent and at home longer?
Oh, absolutely. That's another piece. I would love to see our long-term care system function in a really positive and healthy way, but it's also not where everybody lives. Only 5% of older adults are there. The vast majority are community living. And so we need to make sure that folks have their needs, their health and their social needs met well. And that would be a couple of the studies that I'm looking at right now from that last slide. Those are all with folks who are still living in the community.
Okay. Next question you might recognize is from Joanne McLean, who's actually the president at UFV. So thank you, Joanne, for and your team for all the support you have and making today possible. But she's got a question for you, Dr. Canning. What role can UFV play?
Well, one of the things that we are hoping through CERA is that we move UFV forward as a more age-friendly university. The city of Abbotsford became an age-friendly city a couple of years ago, and these are some of the initiatives that I mentioned in the PowerPoint that the WHO is promoting. So the Alzheimer's Society talks about dementia friendly, and the UN and the WHO age friendly, and these are all similar kinds of initiatives. They're just ways to make sure that we don't exclude people based on age, and that we have institutions like the university that has something to offer older people. There's a reason to come to campus at all ages. It's not only for our 20 to 30-year-old students. It's for second career folks, it's for retired folks. There's lots of ways that we can partner back and forth. So I'm looking forward to that, Joanne. That'll be our challenge going forward. Perfect.
Actually, my granddad in Australia, he attends something called the University of the Third Age. And it's exactly that. They have all sorts of programs for mostly seniors to come and take, and they partner with people in the community. It's really quite a cool initiative.
I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. Cool program. Got a question here from Ruby. What kind of training or education would you recommend for someone interested in starting a green care home? You might have a partner here.
So you have to be a farmer or partner with a farmer, because that's the piece of it. But yeah, I think you don't need any other training than to have your connection with a healthcare team. So you would need to connect with people with the expertise in meeting the care needs of older adults.
Okay.
Talk to me, Ruby.
Sounds like a potential connection can be made there. I've got a question here from Anne-Marie. I work in LTC, and our staff would really benefit from learning about dementia care and meaningful activities. Have you considered some online education for staff in care homes?
I would be happy to do any education for you. So if you want to just email me, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, I've also got a question from Ashley, who is an RN and has witnessed a lot of ageism in healthcare. Working with older adults can be challenging and is often not a first choice of many healthcare professionals. What do you feel are the barriers to addressing ageism in healthcare?
That's a really good question, and I think that nurses are actually very ageist. So there's systemic ageism that runs through healthcare. Looking after the needs of older people has never really been seen as very exciting or as a great career choice. In fact, it's often been seen as a career stopping choice in nursing. I think the answer is education. I think it is having real aging experts teach the aging content in undergrad programs. I think it's about having ongoing education once you're on the floor. It's about having some support within the senior admin of the health authorities.
Okay. So
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I know.
Yeah, there's a few thank yous coming in. We are actually coming up fairly close to our time here. So if you do have any last minute questions, now is the time to ask them. I've got a question here from Daniel, and we maybe have time for one or two more before we'll need to transition. But Daniel has asked the question, maybe how can we have better government supports to encourage families to support demented family members at home in an extended family environment rather than to put them in homes? Has your research come across any strategies on that?
I think that's it's bigger than a research study. It really has to do with the way our healthcare system is structured, and looking at the supports that we have in place in community health programming. And again, we're at a bit of a crossroads here, because I think the holes in the systems have been exposed by COVID, but home care and all the supports that would be given in that way also need to be re-looked at. So we're realizing that there's not enough support there either.
Okay.
So I think it's a bigger organizational piece that we need to look at within the health authorities.
All right. I have another question here, and this is probably going to be our last question here. This one's from Craig, who's the VP of External Relations at UFE. Big thank you again to Craig. He's asked, is there a cultural component related to ageism, such as we could learn from other cultures to embed more intergenerational relationships into our society? Somewhat similar to a previous question.
Yeah, I think absolutely. There are different cultures look at the family network differently. So some cultures do have more intergenerational members living within the same household and have sort of a different sense of responsibility in terms of caring for older family members. So yeah, I think that we actually have a lot to learn from each other. It's interesting though, I've been at a few conferences again where there's quite a lot of aging research in Asian countries. And so talking with Japanese researchers, for example, and they're really trying to figure out how to create long-term care homes there, because the struggle with looking after family members there's nothing is perfect. I guess so the long-term care system is difficult, but sometimes it's also difficult for families to try to meet complex care needs in their home. So it's about finding the right resources at the right time that fit each family's needs.
Perfect. It's such a hard area, but such an important area that you're working on. And I just want to give you a big thank you, Dr. Canning, for coming here today and talking to all of us and making this accessible. And just a reminder for those of you who are listening in today, this will be recorded and you can share it or rewatch it after. But thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Canning.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Josh.
No problem, our pleasure. Wonderful. So we're just going to pivot a little bit now and close off today. I'm just going to share my screen again. So we are now done with the question and answers. I would like to ask my co-host Tiffany if she could join me, and we'll do a couple more thank yous and then close off and let you know about exciting things to come. Over to you, Tiff.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you as well, Dr. Canning. It's been an absolute pleasure having you and all of your information. I'm sure I'm not the only one with a grandparent in the healthcare system right now with dementia. And I know that it means a lot that you're trying to improve it and help everybody out there. Thank you so much. As well, we want to do a huge thank you to all of our sponsors that have been able to make this happen and bring all of this informative information to you. The University of the Fraser Valley, the Abbotsford Tech District, Connect, as well as the UFB alumni, TEDx Abbotsford, City of Abbotsford, Vancouver Foundation, as well as the Abbotsford Community Foundation. Thank you so much. And as well, we have one more upcoming speaker, Dr. Satwinder Kurbanes, with speaking on socio impact on South Asian communities in Canada. I have had the pleasure of hearing her speak before. She is fantastic, so I highly suggest tuning in next month. Don't forget to keep up to date with all of our exciting things going on and make sure you don't miss out. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever your preference is. As Josh mentioned, it will be recorded and posted on YouTube if this is something that you think is important and would like to share with all those amazing people in your lives. As well, Science Talks wouldn't be possible without your guys' ongoing support as well. And if you think that this information has been important and you feel like supporting this event, we would be really thankful if you found it, the support button right here. Feel free to log on to our website and donate if that is something that you would like to do. As well, thank you for joining us this month. It has been an absolute pleasure hosting and bringing this to you. Thank you to our speakers and everybody else so much, and we will see you again next month.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.